federal government has ordered that the increase in tariffs be suspended for 2 weeks, pending investigations into what the Labour Minister, Chris Ngige, has described as conflicting field reports justifying the hike in electricity tariff until the investigation is completed. Well, here in the studio to speak on some of these conflicting views on pertinent matters in the sector is the Editor-in-Chief of Electricity Law Reports, Wale Irokosu. Wale, glad to have you join us. Hello, Wale.
Good morning.
Good, fantastic. Glad to have you join us, Wale Irokosu.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Good. Welcome. All right, let's start it this way. What do you make of the suspension of the tariffs for 2 weeks at least before any other discussions can be held?
I think it's a step in the right direction. I mean, it's for 2 weeks for them to look at the cost component of the tariff, because I think the unions are questioning the basis for the tariff, that some of the costs are unfounded. I think it's a good step in the right direction. It's just for 2 weeks, so that everybody has confidence that the government is doing the right thing.
Well, you have been watching this sector keenly. And just after that report of, the tariffs being halted, electricity workers in the country said, hike in tariff will not fix the sector. Do you agree with them?
To an extent. The issue is a bit complex. First of all, we need to agree on something. I mean, the tariff was 53 naira. The tariff was 32 naira, but the cost is actually 53. So government was responsible for 22 naira per kilowatt hour. So last year, government spent 560 billion naira on subsidy, and there's a huge drop in government revenue, about 60%. So government is saying, I can no longer fund this. While the unions are saying, it's a social good, it's a social service, this is the wrong time to increase tariff because things are getting harder because of COVID. And they're also saying that, look, the energy source that this cost is based on is the most expensive energy source, which is gas. That's not the only source of energy, and it's pegged at international price. So why are we paying for it? So both sides have a decent argument, and I just hope that they can come to a resolution on a way forward.
But that's our hope, really. While the organized private sector, Wale, welcomed the fact that the strike by Labour was averted, at the same time, they're asking the government not to go back on the pre-pump price increase and the hike in tariffs. What's your sense of what the organized private sector is saying?
The organized private sector, there's a theoretical divide. They are capitalists, and they need to recover the cost of doing their business. While people in the labor typically they are not business owners, they are looking at the cost of living. So there's a big divide. The organized private sector will always favor cost recovery approach to tariff, and the inefficiency that is in the subsidy process. I mean, the general public will say there's corruption in it. The organized private sector will say it takes me a while to get my money from government, even though people say I'm taking money that I don't deserve. So the organized private sector will always favor an open market.
Well, you touched on the issue of gas earlier, and gas is indeed a major component for the GENCOs to produce powers. But we have signed deals with Russia firms. We have also signed deals with Siemens, I believe. Do you see any indication that with all these deals that we have signed and, the utilization of our gas, we'll be on our way to fixing the power sector and improving power supply?
I strongly believe it's a step in the right direction. So in the mid-term or long-term, I think that would solve the issue. But in the shortest term, I don't know whether there will be a solution in that regard. I think the Siemens deal is largely dealing with all the system losses that we have in transmission network. Currently, we have an installed generating capacity of about 12,000 megawatt, while the transmission capacity is about 5,300. So there's a lot of system losses. I mean, we all grew up with stories of transformer malfunctioning. So those things are still happening. Even though you generate, you can't will it to the end user, you can't get it to the consumers, and that has to be fixed. And there is no money to fix it. So getting foreigners that has the financial capacity to sort it out, I think is a step in the right direction.
Wale, let me also, let's continue on that aspect. We just had a discussion, was 2 days ago, or about 3 days ago, Adesuwa, myself and Adesuwa, with the Honorable Minister Rotimi Amechi on Transportation. We were discussing, he said that the greatest challenge in this area is that of distribution. Why is this such a seemingly intractable problem that defies solution?
I don't entirely agree with the Honorable Minister, even though I hate to disagree with him. I think transmission is the biggest problem. You have, like I said earlier, you have 12,000 megawatt installed capacity, but your transmission network can only take 5,300. So even if you generate, how would the transmission network take it to the distribution system? That's the first major issue. And I think that's a bigger issue than the distribution problem. The distribution problem is also very big in the sense that a lot of people are unmetered and people feel cheated if they don't know what they are using and they are getting billed for it. So that's also a big issue. And also the distribution companies, I mean, they are expected to put in a lot of money to upgrade the infrastructure, transformer, meter and everything, and it looks like there's no liquidity in the system for them to do that.
Well, then that takes me to another question. It's looking like something just wasn't right with the privatization of electricity or power. Is that really the case? What went amiss at the beginning, at the root, and how can this be remedied?
I think for me, if I try to get an answer, I would say the government and everyone involved were targeting privatization as an end. I don't think they focus on efficiency. I think if they had focused on efficiency, it would have been possible for them to give their assets to people that have a lot of experience, even if they are not willing to pay that much for it. I also think the discos as well. I mean, if they had done their due diligence, they would have seen the system losses and they would have asked themselves whether they have the money to upgrade the system. I think the way forward, in my own opinion, is for everybody to come to a round table and reach a compromise. One of the things that I think when you look at America and some countries, a lot of municipal government, when I say municipal government, I mean local government, state government, they try to step in and assist. In Nigeria, everyone focuses on the federal government, the discos and the gencos. We are not asking ourselves, what are the state and local governments doing? What are they capable of doing? And in that regard, I mean, we have to commend the Lagos state government. I'm aware that they have about 5 independent power plants that they are using to power public utilities. They have one in Lekki, they have one in Marina, they have one in Akute, they have one in Alausa, they have one in Ikeja that they use to power the court and the general hospital. And they've also enacted a law that seems to deal with the issue of power generation, theft, and violence against distribution officials. I think the state and the local government can do more. To what extent, I don't know, but I think all hands has to be on deck. That's, I think, is the way forward.
Mm. And let's talk about the role of meters, metering, the metering gap that we have. Why is it impossible to meter everyone at the moment? And you said all hands need to be on deck. Let's also bring in the role of the consumers here, because sometimes, even these power providers say the theft of power you talked about, the consumers are not totally innocent. They also circumvent the systems and, we are at a loss. What exactly is the problem here?
I totally align with your thought. I think metering is a big, big problem. I mean, if you know what you use, you'll be willing to pay. I think a lot of people don't feel there's a trust deficit. In terms of metering, I think it's a problem of the discos. I think the law is very clear. I think Section 80, I think it is, of the Electricity Power Reform Act says they have to meter. It's their responsibility. So they haven't metered. So let's make a mistake about it. It's the fault of the disco. They should meter people so that they can pay for what they use. But the discos too will turn back and say we cannot recover the cost of getting the power across to the people because we're not getting cost-reflective tariff. So that's what they've been saying. But without a doubt, I align myself with you. I think metering is will be a big way to go in solving the issue. I remember when I was a student, I mean, you put off your light because you are using a prepaid meter. So people will also be a bit more economical with the use of power when they know that their meter is reading. I think metering will go a long way in solving the issue.
Now, well, this is like changing the goalpost, when the game has suddenly started. You're now saying, I'm talking about the discos, you're now saying there's no cost reflexive tariffs. I'm just wondering, shouldn't all these things have been ironed out before they were giving the go-ahead, before the privatization? I mean, all these things should have been ironed out. It's like putting the cart before the horse. I don't know whether you see it the way I say it.
I totally see it the way you see it because, I mean, I don't want to go as far as saying the privatization process was a failure. But the fact of the matter is, even federal government is not happy. I mean, I was reading Alhaji Lai Mohammed's statement last week calling out the discos and saying they were incompetent. So obviously, federal government is not happy about the privatization process. The discos too are not happy. They said the asset you gave me doesn't reflect what you said was there. It's worse than what I meant it, and I'm not getting the tariff that you promised me. Also, the consumers are not happy. You are asking me to pay more for less. So everybody is not happy. If we look at it from that angle, I think the privatization process or program has to be looked at again. I don't know whether reversing it is the way to go because that might just create a crisis out of a problem or even a disaster out of a problem. So
isn't that why Labour then is angling and saying that you are simply passing the burden, you are simply suffering the consumers? They should not be suffering this. Isn't it why the Labour is crying out? Why should we bear the burden of things not well done, inefficiency, ineffectiveness, or you not having the knowledge ab initio of what you were inheriting and then working with it?
So there's no silver bullet in this problem. You have a problem, and the problem is money. Federal government is saying, I don't have the money anymore. The discos is saying, I don't have the money. And the consumers are saying, I can't pay for what I haven't used. So we have to find a way out of this lockdown. And I think one of the solutions is bringing foreigners in. Siemens wants to invest billions of euros in the sector. So I think we might have a better system somewhere down the line, maybe 6 months, 1 year, 2 years' time. But this is where we find ourselves. And my thinking is, the simple answer is, okay, reverse the privatization process, take it from the disco and give it to who? So those are some of the issues.
Okay. All right. Stay with us. We'll take a quick break. When we return, we'd like to talk about the role of the regulator in all of this. Join us again. You're watching The Morning Show. Welcome back to The Morning Show here on the Rise News. We still have with us Wale Irokosu. He is the editor-in-chief, Electricity Law Reports. Thank you so much, Wale, for staying with us.
Thank you.
And just talking about the myriad of challenges in the electricity sector in Nigeria, let's talk about the role of the regulator, the NERC, this time around. I had talked about metering, and you said it was the sole responsibility of the discos, but did the regulator not intervene to say, no, let's have a MAP program to take it out of the hands of the discos? How well would you say NERC has played its role as a regulator of this sector?
I think I think in terms of their role as a regulator relating to metering, I think they are trying their best because it's the role of the discos, and the discos have not done it in about 5 years. Do we continue waiting for them when they are claiming they don't have money? Or you get the consumers to pay for the meter and they can recover the costs perhaps from usage or something like that? I think that's the middle ground NEC is trying to reach. They do have a difficult situation on their hands unless they want to fund it themselves. The discos are metering, but they are not metering as fast as they should. As a matter of fact, I think at one point people were paying for meters that were not being supplied. So I think NEC coming in and stepping in is just to try and find a middle ground. I will concede we don't have an ideal scenario. An ideal scenario is for people to be metered from the word go.
Exactly, and you talked about paying for meters. Actually, we had the experience. We had to pay for our meters. What eventually happened was that NEPA, PHCN was now giving us, they were not giving us units, over time to cover our cost, the cost we used to pay for the meters, and that's how we eventually had meters. Wale, in your in what ways will the law report, that's talking about your law report, be a useful tool, that's what you talked about, in assisting the regulators who seem to have a challenge with conflicting duties of maintaining and enforcing safety/quality standards, attracting investments, and then ensuring that investors recoup their investments? Looks like quite a lot on their plate and looks like conflicting functions. So you did a law report on that. In what ways can the regulators assist?
I think that the regulator is have a balancing act. On one hand, they have to ensure that licensees, the discos, the gencos, they run an efficient and prudent system. That means they are not passing expensive costs to the consumers. On the other hand as well, they have to also ensure that the consumers pay what they are meant to pay, and also ensure that the licensees don't overcharge the consumers. That's on one hand. As far as the electricity law report is concerned, it's a compendium of judicial decisions and quasi-judicial decisions. So it will help them in having a source to look at. So today, if the regulator wakes up and says he wants to make a decision, he would have more onerous task of researching the interpretation of all the rules, regulations, and laws that have been passed. What we've managed to do is to cobble or compile a list of those cases that are impactful on that sector. So it's easier for the regulator to just pick that book and just the law report and look through and see whether they are on the right path, because any rules or law that they make is subject to the interpretation of the courts, and they need to know the mind of the court so that they are properly guided.
Do you think they're going to take up that challenge of, what is a challenge really, of looking into that law report? Are you making efforts to get it across to them in one way or the other so they can be assisted?
I think we've done a lot about that. We've written to them. We have a launch event on Wednesday, 7th of October. The NEC Commissioner for Legal and Compliance, Mr. Dafe Akpaneye, he would attend. So, and it's been well received so far. I think they are quite keen about it.
Oh, that's interesting.
To what extent would you say this policy somersaults and divergent laws have impacted the sector? How much of a role does this play in the erratic nature of the sector?
I think it has impacted it because what businessmen look for is predictability, and that's what we all look for. So if I don't have stable electricity, I might decide to get a generator and buy 1,000 litres of diesel. So I might not be interested in using the disco power anymore because they are not predictable. The same thing for a businessman. Before you put your money in anything, you want to be able to predict your risk, to assess your risk so that you know the decisions, how your decision will play out. But in a situation where there are policy inconsistency, it's more or less, it's difficult to the point of impossible for you to be able to predict and make informed decisions.
All right. Again, according to your report, lack of clarity in the laws and regulations and their interpretation is preventing foreign investors from making informed decisions on investments. Wale, could you explain what you're driving at here?
What I mean by that is, when there's a policy position or even law, that's what you use to determine whether it's a good business for you to do. After you take that decision, 2 minutes after or 10 days after, the policy changes and you are running a loss. And I think a lot of businesses, a lot of organizations have been destroyed over policy inconsistency in Nigeria, which we're known for, unfortunately. And that's the same thing that's happening in the power sector. If you are looking at it from the consumer standpoint, they are going to tell you, they said when we have privatization, things will be better. They said they are getting rid of NEPA. That's not what we're getting. You know, the discos will tell you, they said I will be able to recover my cost after a while. They've not allowed me. The federal government will also tell you something else. So there has been a lot of policy somersault which will prevent anybody from coming forward if they are really very prudent with their resources. And that's why I think that Siemens intervention is quite interesting, because to me it looks like what I refer to as a G2G transaction, government to government, because the president of Germany came in, and I'm sure one of the things that she will be looking to do is, Mr. President of Nigeria, I need commitment to say that you are not going to change your mind after 6 months. So they want to deal with it at that level before Siemens come in. That's my own guess, and I think it's the way forward.
I'd like to make another guess. It's been 60 years of independence, and a lot of Nigerians cannot switch on the lights and have them on. When do you think we can have that?
Uninterrupted power.
Yes.
That's a difficult one. I think I see a light at the end of the tunnel.
I hope it's the electricity light you see at the end of the tunnel.
I see electricity light stable. I can see electricity light now, but I see a stable one in about 5 years.
What is
5 years?
happening? What
Okay,
is happening in my? I must say, I am enjoying light to some extent. I'm being very frank about this. And I just wish that we can move from there. So who knows? It might even be less than 5 years.
And there are many communities who haven't even seen light.
I think there's a bit of discrimination as well with the service.
Yeah. Some places, even some places having better light than myself. Some places you wonder, are they in Nigeria?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no time, but there's a lot more to generate light other than gas and hydro. And there's a plan to put solar in about 5 million households by the Buhari administration. We keep a watch on that. But thank you so much, Wale,
thank you very much
for your time on the Morning Show today.